Welcome to LOP Topic Chat. Tonight's topic will be the Dyatlov Pass. Your host is yours truly, Kohan Luke. And co-hosting will be Scarlett. This is probably one of the most creepiest city stories I've ever read, viewed, or even saw on TV. There's been movies made about this incident, as well as books. Let's start, shall we? January 25th, 1959. A group of 9 skiers were going on a ski trip in Russia. Sounds like fun. What could go wrong, right? Igor Dyatlov was the leader of the group. Very experienced skiers. These guys were not amateurs. They knew their stuff. They knew how to camp and ski in the harsh winter of Russia. And so they went on their trip, and around February 11th, they were supposed to come home. They never came home. No messages, no phone calls, nothing. So they sent on a search party. The military got involved, looking over the mountains, and eventually they saw something terrifying, beyond words. Tonight we're going to go over what happened, and afterwards we're going to try to piece together what could happen to these people. What could explain this trauma, all this horror that happened to these people? It's like something out of a horror movie. Not pretty, folks, so buckle in. Get ready for the ride of your life. Search party found the tent half torn from the inside out. So whatever happened to these people, they were in a rush to get out. They didn't go to the zipper in the front of the tent. They went out through the tent. They cut it open and ran out. Now ask yourself, what could scare you this badly to leave the tent in that fashion? As we go over the remains of these people and try to piece together what could have happened in a logical aspect, if you can. First they found were 2 people by a tree, naked, with just underwear on. No shoes, no socks, no pants, no shirt. And the tree they were under was a pine tree. Branches 15 feet up were broken off. Their hands were torn up badly. Looked like ground beef, basically. So whatever was chasing them, or what they were scared of, caused them to climb up a tree with their bare hands. All bloodied. Painful, I imagine. And there's a campfire nearby, so they did not want to go back to the tent, obviously. They died probably from hypothermia overall. But man, just weird stuff. The 900 feet away from that was, they found the leader. He had a branch clasped in his hand, protecting his head, as if something was attacking him. So they leave the tent, and they're still running, they're scared, and I assume something's still after them. It sounds like it. Like you're probably thinking, well, maybe this is a Yeti or something. There's no footprints were ever found of a Yeti or big footprints. And just their footprints, which is weird in itself. Oh, man, it gets better. And they find another hiker. Rustum Slobodin, skull fracture, 7 inches across, skull fracture. From what? I mean, more than one thing chasing them? I mean, there's 9 people there. They couldn't fight it off? Blows your mind. And they found these people right away. They found the 5 people right away. One took them like 2 weeks later on, and then they didn't find any more. For 2 months, they didn't find any more until the springtime. This is where it gets creepy, folks. Even creepier than what it was. They were under 12 feet of snow. These guys were fully dressed. There wasn't any clothes at all. So you have the 5 people there who were missing clothing items, and they were 2 by the pine tree, who they were trying to climb up with their bare hands. And other ones were found face down in the snow, as if they died trying to shield themselves or hide from something. The ones that are fully dressed, this is just disturbing. Skulls were crushed, shattered ribs, but no signs of bruising or soft tissue damage whatsoever. And one was missing the tongue, ripped out. She had blood in her stomach. I mean, she was alive when it happened, screaming probably. Imagine finding these people and you're wondering what the hell happened, you know? And the force that causes damage to these people, you see that capable of man, basically. It was like a car crash. In fact, the car crash was that much power involved. A human being could not have done this. The fractured skulls, the cracked ribs, no tissue damage. And it gets weirder. You found radiation readings on 2 of these people. Not really high radiation readings, but higher than normal, higher than you're supposed to have on you. And at the funerals of some of these people, their skin was orange or brown and their hair was gray. Which could be according to frostbite though, but then how do you explain the radiation readings? And this is the weird thing where they landed at too, by the way, which I forget to say to you guys. They were journeying around the Orton mountain range, and the mountains they were camped on was warned by the locals of not, the Mountain of the Dead or some other names to it, and people usually go up there. My thing is this: if they were going to stop somewhere, why not stop in the forest? They stopped on an exposed, basically cliff-like area, exposed to the elements. These are experienced skiers. Why wouldn't they stop somewhere in the forest, pitch a tent, whatever, and have the protection of the trees? Why would they stop there for? It makes no sense to me. And a couple years before this happened, there's a tribe called the Manzis. 9 hunters went up to the mountain and they died too. Mysterious depths. It's almost like the mountain's cursed in some ways. But for the twist though, it's hikers that were 30 miles away. The night that all this went down, saw orange orbs all over the area. And I did a little research on this too about the orange orbs, and they were seen years ago too. And even to this day, there's some UFO activity on that mountain pass. So there is a UFO aspect to this encounter. Before we go into what could have actually possibly happened and why it happened, let's revisit it. You have a tent they found, torn up from the inside out. These people didn't go single file out the front like most people do. They went through the tent. Something scared the fuck out of them, basically, and they scattered everywhere. And whatever scared them continued to scare them, because 2 of the party tried to climb up a pine tree with their bare hands. Their hands were found raw like ground beef. Branches were, about 50 feet high, were broken. And instead of going to the base camp, so everyone's alright, they built a campfire. There was some burn damage to their feet, and burn damage also to the trees too, which is why. That's one of the mysterious parts of it. And you find other people face down in the snow, trying to shield their faces still, something, anything. One had a tree branch in his hand and still covering his head, as he was trying to fight something off, it seems like. So Scarlett, what have I introduced so far? What do you think about this so far? I mean, a lot of this doesn't make sense to me at all.
It was quite strange. The temperature at the time was minus 25 degrees. Winds were howling around 60 or 70 miles per hour, and there was blowing snow. So The lights they saw couldn't have been from a helicopter. There's nothing that could have flown in that in 1950. I mean 59, in the 50s at all. They didn't have the equipment to do it. And yet, yeah, the lights were seen. We don't know if these people saw them, and it's not strange that they got killed when they left the tent. What's strange is what drove them out of that tent in the first place. And that's the real mystery. The group of four with the real injuries, whatever it is, pursued them, and they went over and into the ravine, and snow covered them. Or perhaps falling into the ravine could have damaged them like that. I don't know. But the real question for me is what drove them out of the tent.
So what would scare you enough to go out the tent by knife, instead of going up the front of the tent and zip the tent down and you get out there? It takes a couple seconds to do. Instead, these guys were frantically trying to get out of the tent, slashing their knives wildly and going out that way. And not only that, why would you go out the tent with no clothes on? Half the hikers here went out there with missing articles of clothes. They know it's sub-zero weather. They know the Russian winter. Why? You got to be mentally scared just to leave the tent like that. I mean, stupid. I mean, let's run out of the tent as fast as we can with no clothes on into the sub-zero temperatures. What could go wrong? And not forget the lady in the ravine who had her tongue ripped out. Part of the jaw ripped too. I don't know, man. It could have been a UFO that scared them, maybe a Yeti, maybe some kind of new test weapon from the Russians. What do you think? What would have scared you? What would scare you enough to run out of the tent, slashing wildly and cutting a slit down the tent and getting out that way instead of going down with a zipper and zipping the zipper 1-2 seconds and getting out the tent that way? What would scare you enough?
Luke, the chat is pointing out that they didn't have zippers on tents in those days, which I didn't know, but it was laced up. And in those conditions, it could have been frozen. And so it would kind of make sense to cut their way out. As far as the no clothes, they were probably sleeping initially. I would guess they were. And they'd be hanging stuff up so it'd dry out.
Then you go to the tree where two of them were climbing up the tree barehanded, which is always a good idea in the wintertime. No clothes on, up to 15 feet high, breaking out tree branches, they do it. Something scared them. I mean, you don't normally climb a tree unless something's chasing you, basically. But the thing is, that's a Yeti, but there's no footprints anywhere. So explain that one to me.
I wish I could. I'll tell you what I don't buy is the official explanation we might have settled on because they didn't have anything else, which was avalanche. If there was an avalanche, the tent wouldn't have been there. It would have been covered with snow, and yet the tent was still there. It was collapsed, but, it was the way they left it.
And like Jenya said in the room, it doesn't explain the tongue being ripped out by the root, basically. And I was reading this, and I was just chilled, basically. Like there's blood in her stomach, so she was alive when this happened. Imagine the horror of your tongue ripped out. How painful it'd be too. She tried to scream her light, Ugh. I don't like that at all. Just weird stuff. And it doesn't explain the radiation readings at all, and 2 people are higher than normal. It doesn't explain a lot of things. Trying to shield yourself as you're dying, basically. I mean, it sounds like a Yeti, it sounds like a Bigfoot, whatever, but there's no footprints anywhere. There's no signs of claw marks or anything, Now, what if it was a alien abduction gone bad? Same kind of wounds you see in these people are the same ones you see in cattle mutilation. Tongues ripped out, ribs broken sometimes, bones broken. It will only explain the radiation levels of 2 people, but that was it. It was 2 people that had higher normal radiation levels, and the rest were fine. And how do you explain the skin looking orange and brown, with hair gray? Can you count that on frostbite alone? No.
Now, the condition of the bodies is part of the really inexplicable I'd speculated that maybe the Soviets were running some kind of, test, or maybe sonics that terrified them, and their own imaginations took over, and then of course hypothermia and dehydration would do the rest. You dry out terribly at that attitude, and when you're dehydrated it does stuff to your head. But something has to trigger that.
I also found the camera with these guys, and the 33rd photo is a picture in the dark of this. It's a bunch of balls of light, basically, and you're going to wonder, though, if that's something coming down from the sky they're trying to take a picture of. An orb, a UFO, maybe some kind of new weapon at the time from the Russians. I mean, and somebody explained to me, though, that, and Mr. Shane said it was a test photo from inside the lab, supposedly. But that's been discounted by some people, though. But I don't know. I mean, even if you have everything taken away, then you have the orbs saw by other hikers, Where are these orbs, orange orbs, flying around the area? There's a camera around the victim's neck, Scarlett said. Give that a little bit, could you, please?
Yeah, the orbs were seen, and they were seen on that night by people in the village and also hikers on other mountains. And they were also seen for a couple of months afterwards. So I imagine it was still around when the second set of bodies were found.
Kind of creepy, as the theorist said. It was like a force directed at all of them. And a known force hit the hikers, and it was very selective, hitting only the hikers, leaving untouched the snow, the trees, and everything else around. And in the official report, it says an unknown compelling force was behind this. What exactly is an unknown compelling force? It sounds like an elemental force or something. It makes no sense to me. And here's the interesting thing about this whole thing, too, afterwards. The area was sealed off for 3 years by the Russian government, by the Russian military. And there's still files missing from what happened, basically, too. Missing. Gone, As if they're trying to hide something from the public, basically. They don't want us to know what actually happened there. Unknown compelling force. What does that mean to you, Scarlett?
Wow, that could be a lot of things. I mean, that could be everything from the downright supernatural, where they were possessed and went crazy, to somebody playing games, say, with infrasound. Maybe the wind making an infrasound effect on the mountain that, triggered them to go crazy. Because sonics can do that. And, it's pretty... Something definitely frightened them out of their wits. And their actions were irrational afterwards, even after they got out, like you said.
Scarlett, can you explain to us what infrasound is? I'm sure some of us don't know what it means.
Sound that's below the level of your conscious hearing. And it can affect you. And there's some belief that they can tune you to promote or rage or sorrow. I mean, some people, I do believe that this is a weapon. But in 1959, I don't know. And who knows what the Russians were playing with, but there's no evidence that they had an operation going there. On the other hand, the mountain itself could have been producing noise because there was
Excuse me. But if it was infrasound, though, how come you never hear about this happening, in other places? So, I mean, it has to be a unique set of conditions to produce that kind of hum to affect somebody mentally like that. And after you're running away from the area, wouldn't it stop, though? I mean, the infrasound doesn't explain all of it, because you found 4 more of the crew in the ravine, basically. They're still running. Is the sound still going on? I mean... And all of them are dead. I mean, none of them survived at all. You have a tongue missing. You have multiple injuries that no human could actually have done. Maybe they fell in the ravine though, but you have soft tissue damage though. That's the thing that gets me. You have broken ribs, fractured skulls, but no soft tissue damage at all. Was it a weapon they were testing nearby? Wasn't supposed to be there? I mean, there's military bases everywhere in those mountains. There's nuclear bases in those mountains. There's uranium processing plants in the mountains there. I did some research on that thing. Those mountains are crawling with bases from the military. So what can it break the ribs but not damage the skin, though? A sound weapon of some kind? What do you think, Scarlett?
That's heavy impact. In fact, their coroner said that some of them looked like they'd been hit by a truck, but of course there was no truck to hit them. You know, I suppose you could speculate when they went over the ravine, they smacked into rocks and all kinds of stuff. I would think that would do soft tissue damage, though. I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. But, you know, yeah, they were severe injuries, and there was no truck to hit them, so what hit them?
You guys say avalanche or a ton of snow, but you have bruising then. Not only would you have the broken ribs and the fractured skull, but you also have bruising. There's no bruising in them whatsoever. No soft tissue damage. So if it was avalanche there out of the water, and all these experts are studying this case, there was no avalanche. Yeah, if there was an avalanche, we'd not found them for years. They found them 2 months later when the spring melt happened. Can't rule the Yeti either because there's no big footprints anywhere. There's no claw marks. There's nothing like that. I'm still going with the UFO theory, to be honest. I mean, you saw though Ray Chain said the picture wasn't done then, but you have other people saying that the picture was done, and there's just these orbs coming down from the sky, basically, and you have people from 30 miles away seeing orange orbs. You have the history of UFO activity in the area. You have damage consistent with cattle mutilation. But if it was an alien abduction, though, they've all been taken at the same time, and they would be running, you know, I don't know, just, this is the most unusual case I've ever seen, basically, to be honest. And nobody has a solid explanation of what happened. Nobody did.
That's the trouble when you look at it. It fits, like you say, parts of cattle mutilation. There's bits of it that look like this could be an alien abduction, but they return people, as far as we know. And so this is a step in a different direction to return them dead, as far as I know. And, you know, everywhere you look in this case, you end up saying, well, this is irrational. This is somebody that was hypothermic, dehydrated, and scared out of their minds. But you always end up coming back to that first question, which is what drove them out of the tent. You know, it would be so easy to say a grizzly bear, you know, or something. There's no evidence of any kind of footprints. It's a real mystery.
The thing is, too, though, the military was the first on the scene, as though, who knows if there wasn't a cover-up involved, too, to be honest. You know, one of our test weapons, you know, got out of control. We, you know, people were on the mountain, and we killed some people accidentally. We really want this getting out, so we'll do a little cover-up, you know, and we'll move the bodies around a little bit. What do we think it was infrasound that drove them out? It could be, but it doesn't explain the ripped-out tongue, though. It doesn't explain the radiation levels into the crew. It doesn't explain a lot of things. I mean, maybe it was a combination of things. Maybe there was UFOs in the area, scared them. Maybe the infrasound kicked in. Who knows? I mean, but the thing that gets me this is a chill factor, though, and Nola pointed out in the room, and I said it earlier, though. You get the Mazi tribe in the area. 9 of their people were murdered or killed in the area, too. Same vicinity, same mountain range. And they said, well, couldn't it be the Missouri was trying to kill those 9 skiers? But there's no other footprints, though. So that blows out of the water, too. It's like an X-Files case. One you can't solve. You know, I mean, I'd love to see the files on this thing that's missing. What the Russians really thought that happened. But it was an unknown compelling force, whatever that means. And what about they took some drugs? You know, they were tripping or some bad something, whatever. Could I explain it? I don't know. I haven't messed up before. I'd never want to run outside in a sub-zero temperature with my shirt off and pants off. You know? I don't know. I don't have an answer for this case, to be honest. You know, my guess maybe a UFO, maybe infrasounds. I want to believe a Yeti, but there's no footprints. So where do we go from here? You know, I mean, they made movies about this. They've wrote books about this. The case is not solved. People think they know what might have happened, though, but not for sure, though. They're not 100% sure. My honey says UFO drew them out, the infrasound or fear kept them away. That's very possible. Very possible. That's a UFO hotspot, folks. Even the military back then claimed to see orange orbs all over the place. The military, you know, they're really kind of hush-hush about UFO matters. Orange UFOs. Maybe a possible abduction, man, that didn't happen. Infrasound drove them out. The conditions just perfect for infrasound, which is rare in the wild. And you have two guys climbing a freaking tree with their bare hands. You know, their hands are raw, it's like ground beef. Branches are broken off 15 feet high. You have to be pretty fucking scared to climb a tree that high in the first place in the wintertime. There's no clothes on except for underwear. Yeah, hypothermia got some of these guys, obviously, because no clothes on. It doesn't take too long, and when the sub-zero temperature is 20 below zero with the winds howling in Mother Russia. Not at all. And you have the leader of the group found face down with the branch covering his face as he's trying to fight something off or trying to shield himself from something. Two of the three were clothed with other people's clothes. Yeah. Taking somebody else's clothes that are dead. I don't know, man. Other freeze.
This is Nolo. I think that the people that were found at the tree had gone back to the camp, gotten whatever clothes they could find, put them on, went back to where this tree was, and tried to build a fire. Now, I don't know if that was before they tried to climb the tree or after they tried to go, but evidently 15 foot up, that's a lot of panic. They were jumping up and snapping off the branches trying to climb. They had tried it so bad that their hands were raw, like hamburger. But after they tried to get the fire, they didn't try and keep it going. So it shows some signs of they knew what they were doing, and then again, they didn't know what they were doing. It's an odd account at the tree.
No, let me ask you this, okay? They had knives to claw their way out of the tent. That would mean they also had knives on them at the time. Couldn't they have fought something off with a knife? I don't understand this. You know, if they're fighting something off, they had knives, right? This is perplexing me a little bit.
Well, I would like to see an inventory of what they had on the expedition, because I find it hard to believe that they were out in Siberia or whatever, in the wilderness without firearms. I mean, this is bears and wolverines and, you name it. And I can't see them going unarmed, or at least one person being armed. And yet I heard no account of them trying to use firearms. If there was a Bigfoot, you think somebody would have tried to shoot it. But then again, it's the same with the theory that perhaps they were attacked by the indigenous people that were mad that they were in their territory or whatever. But they weren't robbed. There was nothing missing. So they discount that theory. The ambulance, yeah, it did catch a couple of them, perhaps. Ravine, that could be just snow drifting into it. But from where they were located and the pictures of the camp, there wasn't an avalanche because everything was pretty much on top of the snow. Just what could be explained by, regular snowfall.
I'm watching the room here in LOP chat. You're listening to biased propaganda, by the way. And a pack of wolves, a Yeti, natives. There was no other footprints near them, guys. No animal footprints of wolves. No prints of Yeti. No prints of the Mazori tribe, which was nearby. The Mazori lost 9 other people a couple years beforehand. There's There's 3 sets of 9 people that were killed in altogether. I think this mountain's pretty much cursed, man, to be honest. I wouldn't have gone near there. I mean, Look at the name, Dead Mountain. You know, and they have other names for it too, though. But it wasn't just one group of people that died there. There was other groups of people who died in the mountain too in previous years. Something's going on there. Something evil, something bad. I know Jenya said it might be a elemental or a spirit of the woods, basically. Demonic force, possibly. Maybe they were conjuring something in their tent and they got loose. You never know. There's no proof of that either. There was no Ouija board, there was no spells or anything there. This is a very highly unusual case. I mean, usually I can break things apart and figure out what things are, but there's too many variables in here that are unexplained. Like I said, the tongue being ripped out, the broken bones, and no soft tissue damaged. I mean, the force of a car crash? Maybe they tumble down a ravine, though, they'd be all bruised up, though, and there's no bruising at all. What the hell happened here, you know? Dyatlov Pass, man, they met the leader, basically. And these guys were experienced skiers. They were experienced of the Russian winter. They know how to camp out in the wintertime. Something scared the hell out of them for them to come out of the tent from the inside out. I mean, there's no survivors here.
Why did they go to that particular place at that particular time?
They got lost, actually. They went the wrong way, and they had to set up camp because they were tired and stuff. They weren't supposed to go to that mountain at all. They were going to avoid it, whatever. And these are experienced guys, right, Kyle? And they were camping out on the edge of a cliff, basically, and they could have camped out in the forest. Why would you do that?
Charlotte, they were thinking that they were going to go through the pass, because there's a pass down there, and the larger part of the mountain is off to the side. They were going to go through the pass, and they were going to camp on the other side of it. By the time they realized they deviated at an angle, and they were up on the peak, it was getting late in the day, and evidently they decided to camp right there. There were diary entries on that.
Before the show happened last night, you had a theory about something about this group may have stole some radiation samples. Could you please expound upon that?
We were all kicking it around last night, and somebody came up with the notion that these were all students, and they were at a technical college, or the equivalent, and that they would have been able to get their hands on low-grade radioactive substances. And this is all conjecture, mind you, and that maybe they had stolen some of them. Like maybe, and they were going to sell it where they were going to end up at the end of this trip. They were going to go to this town called to meet a contact there. But anyway, that would account for two of them having radiation on them. But supposedly, what may have happened was, when they were camped out, everybody's changing for the night, hanging their socks up to dry and all. Somehow, this shit got opened and spilt. And this is 1959. People know very little about radioactive substances, but one thing they do know is that it's deadly poisonous and you've got to get away from it. And this was at the height of the Cold War. You had Nikita Khrushchev in office. There was warmongering on both sides of the Iron Curtain constantly. They would have been terrified. I know that if any American teenagers had been in a similar situation and somebody knocked over some dust and said, "Oh my God, you spilt the such and such," and it was radioactive, I would have been out that tent in a shot. I wouldn't have walked past it, you know, which might be why they cut the back of the tent. I'm beginning to think maybe the tent was shut. But this is speculation, but it does account for the radiation, and it may account for the funny color of the bodies, and it would really account for why the Soviets barred all access to the mountain for the next 3 years. They would have had to clean it up. And being the time that it was, in the middle of the height of the Cold War, Soviets would have buried it. They would have buried the story, they would have buried the evidence, they would have buried, and none of this would have ever happened. It would have been a mystery. And that is what you have today.
I really like that theory.
This is Nolo. Let me interject something. about why they picked these strange spots to camp. Evidently, they were going after some kind of Soviet equivalent of a junior woodchuck award or something. It was outdoorsman contest or something, and they had a checklist of things that they had to do to win this award. It was, harsh conditions and extreme whatever elevations and whatever, and they were trying to accomplish all of these things while they were on this skiing trip. And they would win this Soviet Hero Outdoorsman Award. So I just needed to put that in there as why they were camped where they were.
I like this idea that they were engaged in some kind of an espionage. I think that of all of the different theories, the UFOs, the Yetis, and whatever, that really, to me, makes the most sense considering the time and the place. It accounts for why they would want to take their clothes off, why they were in such a hurry to get away. It just accounts for a lot of the strange variables and ultimately why they all ended up dead. Because if you were the other person in this exchange, obviously you would want to make sure that you got rid of these students in a place where they could be easily passed off as victims of the elements.
One thing, though, if we were trying to cover up the radiation thing, why wouldn't they hide the bodies that had radiation levels on them, make them disappear? But people still found them and did the levels, and there were two of the people by the tree who had higher than usual radiation levels. I mean, you're trying to cover up that kind of thing. You would have got rid of the bodies, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but this was probably very low-level radioactive substance, and the levels were high, but not high enough that they'd have to protect everybody from them. So they just hoped nobody noticed, or just that it remained inexplicable and explained it away. That's the way I look at it. I don't really know.
Curiously enough, the radiation was found on the clothing of the two people under the tree. Now, these are the ones that had gone back and pulled clothes on and ran back away from the camp, out of line of sight of the camp, and where they built a fire and all of that. So I'm not sure if that meant that the radiation was on the clothes that they picked up, and perhaps the other clothes were, or why were those particular? If they picked clothes at random,
Whatever
why were they contaminated?
If this has any truth to it, they were very inept about it. It was almost doomed to fail to begin with if it could be spilled out like that and all. But it is a possible explanation.
Not long ago, there was some people in Mexico who had gotten a medical radiological device. I guess something went wrong with it after they had stolen the truck that it was in, and they all got sick. They had to go to the hospital. The authorities were saying things like, look, there's a radioactive device, this will kill you, please turn yourselves in so that you can get treatment. And eventually, I think most, if not all of them, died. This kind of thing has happened numerous times where somebody gets a small amount of radiation. It's enough to kill you. I think it makes a lot of sense that they were involved in something to do with the stolen product, and that it went wrong, and whatever ensued was what was responsible for their deaths. To me, that makes a tremendous amount of sense, versus I don't see anything really that indicates Yeti. I haven't really had any reason to think that it's UFOs. It's definitely something obscure, though.
But the million-dollar question is, how do you explain the tongue being ripped out?
Body lays there for a couple of weeks, little animals come up and chew on it.
It wasn't chewed on, though. It was torn out. The jaw was partially torn out, too, so was some of the lips. I mean, and plus they found blood in her stomach. She was alive when this happened, basically. That's the creepy part about it. A lot of blood in her stomach. Here's time for the woo. As you all know, I do bring the woo, okay? Now, a couple years beforehand, 9 Manzori tribesmen were killed on that mountain, right? What if these Manzori tribesmen came back as ghosts and scared the shit out of them in the tent? And chase them around a little bit. What do you want to think about that theory a little bit? It's kind of wooish. You should all know I do bring the woo, so tell me your thoughts on it.
Well, I can't disprove it. I mean, for sure, it could be. It'd scare the hell out of me if something came out, if a ghost came out in a howling snowstorm and chased me out of my tent. You bet I'd run. I don't think that the whole environment they were in was so harsh and forgiving that once whatever it was had them out in the open, they were pretty much.
What do you think about the ghost theory, Cryo?
No, I don't go for the ghost theory.
If you had to pin it down on what actually happened there, what would you say the explanation would be why this all happened, Cryo?
Combination of it being too cold, probably somebody else involved. The native people, even the civilized people in most parts of Russia at that time were a little what we would call primitive. I imagine the native people might be a little bit less so at that time. And I would wonder what other people might have been around. This to me seems like either people who were killed by the elements or killed by other people. I don't really see any need to bring Yetis, ghosts, UFOs into the mix at this point.
But there is a UFO factor to it, though. As I said earlier on, 30 miles away, another group of hikers saw orange orbs in that vicinity. And there was UFO reports years ago from that place, too, and there's still UFO reports to this day, basically, of orange, glowing, huge orange orbs. So there is a UFO aspect to it, though, but like I said, if they were going to be abducted by aliens, they'd be gone. They'd be picked up and dropped off somewhere else. These people are running for their lives. Whether it be an infrasound, or they're running from a Yeti, which has been discounted because there's no prints at all. But I've read somewhere on a couple sites and a couple videos that some of the rescue crews actually did see one or two prints of huge footprints, though. But there's no proof of it, no cast made of it, no photographs, so I have to discount that then. A number of factors does sound like the logical explanation here, Occam's razor. The most plausible explanation is usually the right one. Like I said, the ones in the ravine are what gets my attention more than anything, with the wounds with broken ribs, shattered skull, with no soft tissue damage whatsoever, and the tongue being ripped out. Like I said, this is not like a bad horror movie, but a good horror movie. I mean, the worst case scenario. You're experienced hikers, you're experienced skiers, you're used to the Russian winter, and a lot of things still don't add up. I mean, you look around on different sites and they're trying to explain it away, and nobody has a 100% solid explanation of what happened, and they all disagree with each other and what could have happened. And as for the Russian military and what they thought of it, their case files are missing still. So I guess we'll never know that part of it. I'm sure there's somewhere, though, hidden away. But why would you cordon off an area for 3 years, though? Radiation, maybe something was still there. That part makes no sense to me at all. You cordon off for maybe like a week or two, but this is 3 years later, it's still cordoned off, What would cause something to be cordoned off for 3 years, Nolo, you think?
Well, for one thing, they wouldn't want the site contaminated, and perhaps they wanted to investigate something further. If they found anything, they never did say. And of course, the radiation, if they were seeking the container or whatever that caused the radiation, that would take a while to search out, especially if it had been buried for a while. There's few facts that you can really dig out of this circumstances. One, there must have been extreme panic. They all panicked at once. Second, they weren't rational about it. I mean, if you panic, something spooks you. You run out naked in the snow. It's 25 below, 40, 50 mile an hour winds. You sober up pretty quick. These people, it seemed, never did. The ones that made it to the tree and made a fire, they sort of did, but then they never kept the fire going. They didn't seem to do anything that made sense. You had time to say, we're under attack. They had cameras. They could have taken a picture. They should have had weapons. There was no sign that they were used, other than the knife to get out of the tent. One fella had a willow switch in his hand, but it's hard to say what good that would have been against anything. So the fact that they panicked and continued to be panicked, that smacks to me of the sonic type attack, the infrasound, which might occur naturally. I mean, I know it does in the deserts a lot. It could have been UFO. That would explain almost all of the factors, but it has such woo connected to it that there's no definitive evidence of it other than those orbs.
We have a guest calling in. Mike, go ahead, Tango. So Mike on the air.
Okay, you're green. You're good.
Hello?
Okay, you're good.
Okay, I've heard about this before from several different sources. And one thing that I would like to mention is that for many, many, many generations, they told people to stay away from there. Bad news up in the mountains, okay? And one of the things they stated that it was the place of the kettles, is what they used to call it. And that a long time ago, there were like big upside down cauldrons up there, like if you can imagine the witch on the 4th of July, the cartoon witch, in a cartoon cauldron, okay? Only very, very big. They were upside down up in the mountains there. And that over generations, they had slowly started to sink into the earth. Hold on, excuse me. I hate coughing into the phone, it's so rude. Anyway, they say that these big iron cauldrons were slowly sinking into the earth to the point where they were pretty much gone now. And, let me think, oh yeah. And there were some people that said that the ancient aliens used to keep a storage of space fuel hidden in the cauldrons in case they got stuck or waylaid or whatnot. And for somebody to take a knife and cut the tent and run out the side of the tent rather than to run out the front of the tent or open the flap, it would seem to me that something was either trying to come in or that something actually materialized inside the tent. And the people who were over by the tree making a fire, that just doesn't make sense neither. Because if the booger was in the tent, the giant devil creature or whatever it was in the tent, why wouldn't it just walk over to the tree? And it wasn't no stinky Yeti, because if it was a stink-ass Yeti, these people would have stabbed it or shot it or threw a rock at it or bashed it in the head with a log or something. And it just doesn't make sense. No, I'm not saying I have any answers, but I have one suggestion. Today, for security around many places, some people are outfitted with subsonic, and other people are fitted with, other buildings are fitted with ultrasonic devices. And what that means is that if you get too close, number one, you start to have a really bad feeling in your limbs and in your stomach. And with the ultrasonics, you start to have a really bad feeling in your head, like you just want to be somewhere else. Okay, these are security measures that people have today on installations where they don't want you around. And they don't want no $6 an hour security guard neither, or a soldier boy with a gun. They don't want that, okay? And so what I'm thinking is that maybe on a slim chance, as these giant upside down cauldrons sunk into the earth and had degenerated over the generations, I mean, who knows why? Did the spaceships get wrecked? Did they blow up in interstellar space? Did they have a fight with the neighbors? Was it foul spark plugs, a broken fan belt out in the darkness that exists between the stars? Who knows? But it could have been like a loose wire on a security device that maybe that night caused the image of something terrible, the most horrible thing inside of each one of their minds that they could possibly imagine, to appear before them in a tent to run them off for security purposes. Anyway, this is just a speculation on my part, and I guess that's pretty much all I got to contribute this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. Liberty, you have a comment? Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is Liberty. I was wanting to go a little bit further down. Hold on just a sec. Yeah, I appreciate it. This is Liberty. I was wanting to go just a little bit further down the rabbit hole of the of them having some type of nuclear or atomic stuff that they were trying to sneak in or try to spy. So you could go with it. You could expand that out further to say that they were like double spies, which you've got there. Or anyway, check this out. So they've got 4 people that are dressed up in garb where they were out running around, and then they've got some people that were back at the camp. Imagine those 4 people were taking a sample out to the people that they were meeting because they're spies, and this Iron Man event is a great cover for them to be in where they're at, which is around a military base, which would, is perfect cover and stuff. So just imagine that they're on the level, they're taking out a sample from, whatever university level or whatever they were getting it from. The people that they meet march them back to their camp. Either like the people that are in the tents hear them coming and freak out, cut the back of the tent open, go over the hill and hide behind the tree, and they're like, oh shit, we're freezing, we're gonna die, we need to keep an eye on this shit. These people don't know how many people are out here, you know how that can go. So there's that. Them having radiation automates because they've got the 10 with them, the sample that they're taking out there. Or they could be double agents. The 4 people dress up, go out, meet the Russian people. They're trying to get information or kill those people or whatever. They get found out, get brought back to the camp, same scenario. People cut the back out of the tent and run out of there and try and hide and protect themselves because they're getting their butts creeped up on by Russian soldiers. So yeah, I think that's a really solid branch of discussion of thought to go out on and check out further. Thanks for listening. This is Liberty.
You got to think about what size the nuclear payload would be if that was really the case. An atom bomb, like an early atom bomb, uses an amount of uranium squished into basically the size of a baseball, about 2.5 kilograms. Anything like plutonium, they wouldn't have had any kind of containment for that. It would have to have been some kind of like uranium or a byproduct. It would be a lethal dose of radiation in a fairly small portable container. It would be a solid form, and it would be hot. It would be difficult to drag around in your backpack, but it would be portable. You bring up
Yeah,
medical waste.
explanation.
You bring up medical waste. You got to realize that an atomic bomb is like the Ferrari of technology. It's an extreme amount of technology. It's not something that you can just put together with partial components. The medical waste, at best, you could use it for something like what they now call a dirty bomb. You could, blow it out amongst a lot of people. That concept really wasn't there at the time. They would probably be working with some kind of a refined or partially refined uranium. Uranium is very difficult to refine. It's a secret process. It's a very long process. But in order to get something that you could use for an actual weapon, for any kind of nuclear technology, you would need a fairly highly refined, at least 97% pure sample of the uranium-235. That's not something that you would easily come by. If you had anything less than that, what you would have is, yeah, exactly, not a working amount, but a sample, and that would still be a lethal dose of radiation, but it would not be something necessarily that would be just a bomb in a bag.
I never envisioned that they had anything like a bomb. I envisioned more that they had something that was more low-level radiation, some substance that they were working with. Why they would be doing this, I wouldn't know. But I really didn't, I don't think they could get, like you said, I don't think they could get their hands on weapon-grade material at all. I don't think that was the intent. But the mindset in '59, nobody knew a thing about radiation or what produced it or, anything that produced radiation would look upon with extreme suspicion. They would assume that it could blow up even if it couldn't.
Americans would have wanted it, though. We would have wanted to know what the Soviets had.
That's true. Maybe they were trying to flim-flam an American. This is all conjecture, so I really don't know. I just know psychologically, if they thought they'd been exposed to radiation, they'd run the hell out of that tent.
Oh yeah, and they would shed their clothes. They would shed their clothes. If it were a lethal dose of radiation, they would immediately start to vomit. They might show some kinds of skin abrasion. If they'd been exposed long term, their teeth and nails would show it. They'd have signs of radiation poisoning. Some of it is immediate and severe.
Yeah, that's true, but I'm saying most of this is, if they panicked, it was psychological panic because of the unknown. I don't think that they would have been able to get their hands on weapon-grade material.
So you're saying just the idea of radiation was strong enough to them to make them panic, to leave the tent in a panic, and then consider what they had done and maybe try to fix it, and it was by that time too late?
Pretty much, yeah. Remember, again, this is 1959. The average person knows very, very about atomic bombs beyond the fact that they're lethal and over a large area of devastation. And they give off them any fissionable, anything that produces radiation is gonna, it's not like it is today, where we're all used to it being in the hospitals and that, and low levels. They wouldn't know the difference.
So, Liberty, you're saying that perhaps the Russians came in, found the four of them, and then tortured them to death for information?
But once again, though, in the ravine, there's no soft tissue damage, though, Liberty. They broken ribs, a fractured skull, and other broken bones, but there was no soft tissue damage. Nobody punched them, nobody hit them. That can't be explained, though. Yeah, but if they were being tortured, though, they wouldn't be in the ravine still. They'd be in a camp somewhere. Yeah, it's a plausible explanation. But if there's the radiation thing, the only two people showed signs of higher levels of radiation, not the whole group, though. So how do you explain that one, then? If they're all in 10 and they drop the radiation in the tents, everybody would have radiation on them, just not two people.
There's just no way that 9 people can keep a secret like that.
Well, I'd be willing to guess only the two that had the high level of radiation on their clothes were in on it. But if they spilled or exposed it, they would have immediately blurted out, "Oh my God," in Russian, "That's radioactive," and that would have been enough for me.
Russians were interrogating him though. Where's the footprints at? There's no other footprints. Just their footprints. Which makes this thing really eerie though. You know what I mean? There's no other footprints of Bigfoot, other soldiers, other people, Missouri tribe. There are only footprints. So that kind of debunks that theory there a little bit, Liberty. No offense. Ah, very good. The Russian military were the first on the scene. Good one, man. They could have some covering up too, easily.
I've thought about this incident for years, and I've listened to the cattle mutilation thing and the idea that they're dropped, and I've listened to a number of theories of this throughout the years, and it really wasn't until tonight when I've heard this theory of the stolen nuclear material that kind of clicked that really seems to me to be the most reasonable of the theories. It seems to cover all of the bases. I'm unclear as to what it doesn't explain.
Well, the lights in the sky could have been whoever was going to come and get this material from them, and because of conditions couldn't get close.
Alright, we're going to have final thoughts on this and close it out. Going down the list, tell me what you think happened, your most plausible explanation of this, and we'll start with Scarlett.
Well, I really tend to believe that theory because it accounts for so much of it that we don't know, that I can't say definitively that's what it did. I'm leading to the radioactive substance.
I think it was a case of a perfect storm. The radiation spill, perhaps a combination of the infrasound, and dehydration, and the state of mind of these people.
Now, for years I thought it might be anything from Bigfoot to aliens. Now I'm kind of leaning toward it just is radioactive material that students had sneaked out and tried to sell off to somebody. I think that makes the most sense.
Well, there you have it, folks. Most people agree it might be radiation, but I think it might have to do with UFOs, to be honest. But whatever it is, it's still unexplained. It's still classified. The files are gone. They can't find them. No matter what site you go to, no matter what things you read, though, everybody has a different